This video tutorial is a guide on how to use numbers, and you'll probably find this quite useful when doing your reports and you're writing your methods and your results and you're using a lot of numbers. So I'm going to start with when it's best to use digits or words when expressing numbers. So there's a general rule that when a number is greater than 10, you report the digits, and when the number is less than 10, you report the number in words. So in this sentence we have there were 98 participants divided into two groups, and we've used digits and words to express numbers. However, this rule isn't always steadfast, and it can change depending on the circumstance and depending on what you're communicating to the reader. So here we have participants had between 8 and 64 family members. So we have a number here that's less than 10, but because we're comparing it to a number that is greater than 10 within the same scenario or sentence, we then use the digit so that we're keeping the information within the sentence continuous, because it would be kind of harder to read if it was the word 8 getting compared to the number 64. So for continuity's sake, it actually is more beneficial to have digits being compared to each other. Other instances when you do not have to use the word to represent a number that is less than 10 is when you're expressing the time, for example 4 p.m, or a date, such as the 4th of June, or an age, like 3 years old. Or if you had, let's say, participants, 8 participants, so a participant number that was less than 10, you can also write that using digits as well. Another exception is when you're referring to figures in text or in their caption or heading. You use the digit to express and label the figure. So refer to figure 1 using the digit. See table 2 for all remaining descriptives, again using the digit. So if you have any other queries about when to express a number as a digit or a word, I'd refer to Red Book for more information, or you can also go to the APA manual for even more information again. I'm going to move on now to some other ways of using numbers. So there's a rule when writing numbers that you don't start a sentence using digits, such as the number 128 using digits. I find this is quite common in student assignments when they are writing in their method how many participants there were. There were 128 participants were involved in the study. This is wrong. Do not do this. Alternatively, what you should do is you should write it in words, 128 participants. Or another way to avoid making this error is just to not start your sentences with any numbers. You could say participants were 128 children, and you probably provide a little bit more detail than 2. So that's a no-no. Do not put digits at the start of a sentence. Another thing I want to show you is how to know when to put a naught in front of a decimal or naught. So I have 4 numbers here: height, a t statistic, a p-value, and an r-value. And when numbers can be greater than 1, that's when you put a naught in front of them. So t-values can be greater than 1. You'll often see t-values of 4 point something, 2 point something. So because t-value can be greater than 1, we put a naught in front of the decimal. For p, however, though, p cannot be greater than 1. So therefore, we do not have a decimal in front of it. So remember, use noughts when the number can be greater than 1. Don't use a naught in front of the decimal when the number cannot be 1 or greater. Lastly, another point is how many decimal places to report statistics to. So here I've got the mean age of participants and the standard deviation, and I've reported them to 2 decimal places. Remember to round as well when reporting decimals to 2 decimal places. So yeah, mean and standard deviation to 2 decimal places. And this is generally the case, but there are some times instances where you might report a statistic to 1 or 3 decimal places depending on the statistic. So here I've got a p-value of 0.045. P-values generally tend to be reported to exact values, 3 decimal places, and this is because we want to provide statistical precision to the reader. However, if a p-value was 0.040, having this naught on the end doesn't add any extra detail to provide statistical precision, so then you wouldn't have to report the naught on the end. So if you need any more details about how to use numbers, ensure that you go to the Redbook site, and alternatively you can also go to the APA publication manual. So I hope this video was helpful in providing a few handy tips on how to use numbers that will help you in writing your research reports and maybe even your essays.